Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to talk about Sequencer. Sequencer is the tool inside Unreal that I've been using to render all my backgrounds that you see in the intro of my latest videos, and it's what I also use to render the homecoming cinematic. Now I'm also going to talk about doing some basic camera animations within Sequencer, so stay around till the end of this video. If you want to help out the channel, you can join our Patreon, link is in the description. If you cannot join the Patreon, then just leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't, and ring that bell for notifications. That really helps out the channel. There's also Twitter, and there's Discord, where we have a community of over 300 people now that's going to help you out with all your Unreal questions. Now, let's get on with this beautiful environment, and let's start the tutorial. Okay, as always, here we are in Unreal, and we have this nice looking Soul Cave level. This is a free asset that's on the marketplace. It's actually an epic asset, so it should be free for everyone and for all the time. So if you go and let me show you what it looks like, just type Soul Cave on the marketplace and it should be this one right here. Like I said, it's by Epic Games, so you should be able to find this for free. Now let's get on to Sequencer. We're going to talk about the basics of sequencers, which is actually something that I use in my coming home cinematics, like in the description. Now for that, we just have to come here to cinematics, click, and we're going to see that we have add level sequence and we have an add master sequence. Level sequence is what we're going to talk about today, because we're just going to talk about the basics. This is the master sequences. If you are doing various levels and you want to add all those shots from those levels into a single sequence, so you don't have to be cutting it there in post, or if you are using it as a cinematic within your own game, that will be the way to go, and we'll talk about that one later in another tutorial. But for now, we're going to look at the basics. If you are an all-time Unreal user like myself, because I've been using Unreal since 2016, you'll notice that Matinee is no longer available, and it hasn't been available for a while. That's because Sequencer basically replaced it. So I'm going to add a level sequence, because if I go here into my Sequencer tab, you're going to see that there's nothing here, which, by the way, if you don't see that tab, make sure you go to Windows, Cinematics, and click on Sequencer. That'll probably bring you the tab kind of like a floating way, and I just dock it here because it's more comfortable for myself, but here is the place where you'll find it. After that, all you have to do is add a level sequence. We're going to give it a name, call it test 01, and it will instantly create a sequence for us. So as you can see, we have this browser here, so we can add our assets, and over here we have a timeline with the number of frames that we're using right now. So over here we have some tools. I'm just going to talk about some of the tools. So we have this little disk right here. This is for saving. We have this camera. This will allow us to create a camera in the exact same shot that we're at right now, so it's super useful. This will get you a quick render, but won't be as high quality as if you were using Movie Render Queue. So I highly recommend using Movie Render Queue if you're doing an actual cinematic. For more like in-game stuff, this one will work just fine, but if you're doing film stuff or architectural visualization, you want to go with Movie Render Queue, which, by the way, there's also a video on the channel, link in the description. The other one that we're going to be using is this one right here. This one's usually toggled like this, so it's usually off. This is auto key. That means that every time I move an asset that's already being keyed here, it's going to automatically create a key for me. That's why I usually leave it on, because that way I don't have to be going back and making sure that I keep that exact position. So let's just do around here. Let's create our camera. So I'm just going to click here. As you can see, that created our camera in the same spot that we were. We're actually a little bit closer because of the focal length. So if I were to reduce the focal length to 20, you can see that I can move the properties of the camera right here. I go back to the exact spot that I was before, but I like to kind of have a little bit of a higher focal length, specifically for this shot. I talk a little bit about focal length on my depth of field video, so if you want a little bit more in depth about that, you may want to watch that. Again, All of these videos are going to be on a playlist called A Coming Home Cinematic, where I created several videos going through the several tools that I use for that cinematic. And I'm going to end up this series with a breakdown of the whole process of how I did all the things for that specific cinematic. I want to dial in a focal length of around 35 mil, which I think it's fine. And then I want to get that nice depth of field. So I'm actually going to back away where we're at. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is a nice shot. Okay, we're actually going to lower the aperture. The lower your aperture, the more blur and bokeh you're gonna get on your depth of field. So that's why I like to do that. By the way, I have not keyed anything yet, so that's why nothing is coming through here. And let me set my focus distance so I can get a little bit of blurriness. Let's see, 200. Oh, too much. I'm sorry, too little. Okay. Okay. So I want my focus distance to encompass this whole area, but I don't want to go that far. So let's just do 1200. Okay. I want to leave it at 1000. That seems to be fine. And we have a little bit of a lens flare here that's coming from the post-processing effect. But again, this tutorial is mostly about sequencer and how are we going to animate this camera here. All right, so now that we have all these parameters, one of the things you want to know is about this timeline. So in this timeline, we have the camera cut. So the camera cut is really important because if your camera cut ends here, let's say, and I were to go all the way onto here, this is where your render will end. And you can keep on rendering this, but it won't render your camera, just so you know. So it's very important that you keep your camera cut all the way to occupying all the frames that you want it to occupy. So I'm gonna leave it all the way to this red flag right here. And another thing that I like to use when I'm doing sequencer is I like to go here to perspective and change from default viewport to cinematic viewport. Over here it's cinematic viewport, and I actually have to go back to my camera. Another good way that you can use to go back to your camera is just by hitting this little camera button. That's gonna send you back to where your camera was. All right, so each little space over here is going to represent the parameter that we are moving on this side. So if I break down the transformation of my camera, you're gonna see that I have all of these that we can use. So let's make just one quick animation of the camera so you can see about these parameters. So I'm gonna position myself at 0. I wanna make sure that I have auto key on. And I'm going to click a key so that I transform all the parameters down here. You could do it per parameter. So you have location, which is position. You have rotation and you have scale. Scale is not gonna do anything to your camera. But rotation, you're gonna see that you have roll, pitch, and yaw. So that makes things a lot easier. Now let's just key everything. You're gonna see that we have a key for every single parameter around here. And I'm actually going to move all the way down, let's say to 105. And I'm gonna move my camera. I'm actually going to pilot my camera with mouse and keyboard. And we're gonna move this way. Okay. And as you can see, a key was created around here, but you can see that I do have less dots here that I have in the beginning. That's because scale wasn't keyed, because you don't key your scale. I only keyed all these parameters, and I think I didn't even key the roll, because I'm not rolling is from side to side. So if you want to get Dutch angles, then you will be using roll. But like you see, I didn't use that, so it's not being keyed. That's the beauty of using this. So if I go back, you're gonna see that my camera is animated, and I think this may be a little bit fast. So yep, this is a little bit too fast. So if I wanted to increase the range of my frames, you're gonna see that I have some numbers here. So I have a green set of numbers and a red set of numbers. So those represents these two flags that we have around here. So if I wanted to, let's say, increase the amount of frames that are available to me on this timeline, let's do something a little bit bigger. Let's do something like 630. So as you can see, that increased the amount of frames that I have. And this little bar here, if you play with Adobe Premiere or Adobe After Effects, you should be very familiar with this. But just so you know, if you pull it this way, you will increase your view of your timeline. If you pull it this way, it will decrease your view of your timeline. The reason why you want to do that is if you want to fine tune something around here, you might want to move by frame instead of moving by several frames like that. So that's something that might be useful to you. The other thing that we're going to do is, since we have all our frames all the way to 630, we could do two things. We could actually drag the red flag like this, or if you want it to be more accurate, you can just do 630 here, and your red flag is going all the way till the end. All right, and we're going to bring our camera cut all the way down here, and let's just click and drag, so we can drag a marquee selection, and let's make this further away to, let's see, 330, so it's not as fast as it was before. All right, so let's see how we're doing with this. So you can also come instantly to your markers by just clicking on the dots. That will instantly take you there. So I'm gonna click here, and you can click play. Let's see. Okay, that's a little bit better. And it goes all the way to the end. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but the camera is not going all the way in the same speed. You're gonna see that if I hit play, it actually slows down, then it gets a little bit faster. Then when we are getting all the way down to these dots right here, start getting a lot slower. The reason why is because we are using ease in and ease out. So we could change this, and it all depends on how you want your camera to travel. So let's say we didn't want any ease in and ease out. Then there comes this little icon right here. So we could click this icon, and it's going to give us the sequencer curves. And again, if you've used animation in a 3D program, this should be fairly familiar to you. If not, let me explain. So let's click on location. So if we click on location, it's actually going to show us the location changes from within our camera. There's also the rotation. So if we go to the pitch, you're gonna see that there's only one line because pitch is only in the Y-axis and yaw is only on the Z-axis, but you can see that they're both represented here. So if you want to scroll backwards, I'm just using the scroll wheel, and you can use the right mouse click and drag to move it around so you can see what's going on. But let's focus on the location. So right now I have the ease in and ease out situation going on right here. That's why you see that there's kind of like an S curve going on, and there's also a big S curve right here. So what we're gonna do is actually we're gonna go to our location, and we're gonna make all these linear. That way we have one constant speed from start to finish, and we don't have this ease in and ease out. Though this may be also useful in certain cases, but I mostly like to work on a linear fashion unless I'm trying to do something very specific. So if you right click on top of the icon, you're gonna see that you have all these. So we have auto, we have user, which will give you a Vca handle. We have break, which will give you a Vca handle that will change from one side and the other indifferently. So right now, if I move the Vca handle, because I don't have anything else right here, it's acting as if it was a broken Vca handle. So I'm actually going to go back on that, and I want to select all of these, right click, and we're going to go to linear. All right, there you go. So they turn from a dot into a triangle. This is what indicates me over here that they are moving in a linear fashion. So you could also go here, right click, and you could change this to a linear one. If you don't want to go into the curved ones, you could always just right click here and change them to a linear. So that way you don't have to go into the curves. So just select them all and change them to linear. That way we don't have the change in speed. So if I hit play, we'll have a constant speed from start to finish. There you go. So that is one way to animate our camera. Now I'm actually going to get out of here. All right, now that we are here outside of our camera, I actually move the keys a little bit to show you something, but you can see that there's a line that goes from the start of our camera to the end of our animation here in Sequencer. So if I were to move the sequence right here, you can see the camera, it's actually moving along that line. So what I'm gonna do is, this is how it was before. So you can see that we have this gizmo right here is obeying the world coordinates, but I wanted to move to show me the position of the camera. So I can click here, now go to local, and I can move my camera in its local position, its local axis. So I'm gonna go all the way over here. I'm gonna create another key. I'm gonna move it to the side, and you're gonna see that that line move with me. So everything that you do here will be affected if you have the auto key enabled. If I didn't have auto key, then nothing would happen. Now, one of the issues that happens is that my camera is now moving in this direction, and it's kind of going too close to this pillar right here, which I may not want. So I can go here into my curves. I can go into location and see what's up. And one of the things that I can do is I can move it with a Vca Curve. So as you can see, if I have a Vca Curve, because this one is not linear, this one's actually the auto one. So that generates a Vca Curve for me. But just for the sake of showing you what a broken Vca Curve looks like, if I select these, then I will be able to move it this way and not the other way. However, I do not recommend this, the broken Vca, unless you're doing something very specific, because the motion, it's not very natural. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to do kind of like an S shape Vca. So it's now on auto. Let's do it like this. And let's see how our camera behaves. So I'm gonna shoot back. And let me just go back to my cinematic viewport, locking my camera, hit play. And now we have some nice motion. And again, it adds a little bit of a difference in motion because we're using the auto one, so it's easing in and out. It's not going on a linear fashion. So let's add some little pitch and yaw around here. So I'm gonna move it all the way over here, and let's do a pitch, start looking upwards like that. Let's see how that looks. As you can see, we pitch our camera up. And another thing that I'm gonna do is I want the camera to look more to this side once it hits this spot. But before doing that, I actually need to key something over here, because if I were to change the jaw, which is one of the things that I need to change in order for it to look this way, then it will change over time from here all the way down to here. And I wanted to change from here to here so I can start seeing things on this side once it hits this exact spot. Now for that, I need to add a key myself, so I'm just going to key that. I'm going to go all the way over here, and I'm going to move the yaw this way. So right now it's creating some nice lateral motion and rotation. So I'm going to click here. That, however, is a little fast. So I'm just going to move these around. Just going to maybe place this one around here and this one around here. And they are on auto, so they do have the ease in and out. They're not linear. We may change that. Let's see how it looks. And it's maybe a little bit too harsh for us. Let's just do it this way, like that. And let's do a little bit more of a pitch so we can see this nice temple-like structure around here. Let's see how that behaves. And again, it's a little bit faster, but I could spend a lot of time tweaking, and that's actually what I did when I was recording the Coming Home cinematic. I was doing a lot of tweaking and turning things into linear, easing in and out certain things that I needed to do. And as you can see, you can animate all the parameters that you have around here. Alright, so I spent a little bit just tweaking around and expanding some of the keys so that way it wasn't as fast. But as you can see, I got some little nice reveal of this structure right here with a very small cinematic. And those are the very basics of Sequencer. After you're done that, if you want to render your work, you will go here. If you want to use this, if you want to use Movie Render Queue, please go to the link in the description. But if you want to do a quick render, you go right here. I highly suggest that if you're going to be rendering, you don't use AVI, you use a image sequence. The reason why you want to use an image sequence is because this is a rendering engine, and things that can go wrong will go wrong, and this thing will crash because that's how 3D and VFX happen. If you, the time where you don't want things to crash, they will crash. So to save yourself some time and headache, I would suggest that you choose an image sequence. That way, if it crash alongside a particular frame, then you can render from that frame on instead of having to render the whole thing all together. My preference, if you've been around the channel, you know that I'll go for PNG. If you want to go higher bit depth, I would suggest EXR over BMP, but I usually do a PNG. Another thing that we haven't talked about is the frame rate. So the frame rate is something that you would choose before you actually start creating your cinematic. In this case, I'd rather leave it at 30 frames per second. That's fine. But if you want to do some particular frame rate, you could change it over here. And you can do 24 if you want to make a more filmic kind of situation. Or you could just leave it at 30 frames per second or increase it to 60. That depends on what you're trying to convey with your movie here. You can also change the resolution all the way to 4K. I don't recommend doing 4K in here because it does tend to crash. If you're gonna do 4K, just go to Movie Render Queue. 1080p, it's quite fine. If you choose an image sequence, the compression quality will always be 100%, which I always recommend. Over here, you can select where your movie is going to be saved and what's the file name format. And I usually leave everything else here as default. And because you don't want to change any of this, you want your cinematic engine scalability. That means you want the highest possible scalability here. And this is depending on whether you have some gameplay elements here, whether you want them to be turned off when your animation is playing. Before you leave, remember to leave a like and leave a comment. It really helps with the engagement with the channel, helping this video to get all around YouTube. And share it if you can. If you also can and want to help the channel, you can donate to the Patreon, link in the description. There's a Twitter, you can follow me there, and there's the Discord where me and all members of the community will be answering your questions. That is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.